Everyone, I am so excited for you to listen to today's podcast with my very special guest, Kristine Jenson. We had such a great time talking. We talked for so long that this is actually going to be a two-parter. So today is part one, and next week will be part two. And make sure you listen to the whole thing today because there's a little special surprise for you at the end. Kristine Jenson is a prime example of transforming tragedy and loss into something beautiful and hopeful for others. Born and raised in Minnesota, Kristine has always loved the natural world and built a career around protecting and enhancing the environment for the last 2 decades. She also began to practice yoga and meditation at age 19 and has found it to be key in her healing from a traumatic childhood. Her life seemed to be moving along well, and in her mid-20s, her older brother had his first child, a daughter named Drew. Kristine fell in love with that little girl. She developed a very close relationship with Drew and was ecstatic when her little sister Devin was born 2 years later. Unbeknownst to anyone, Devin was born with a very rare heart defect, and when she was just 1 day old, she went into distress. Thus began a 3.5-year-long odyssey to save Devin. Sadly, Devin lost the battle, and Kristine, along with everyone else in her family, were devastated. Over the years, Kristine tried to work through the pain of losing Devin. She had 2 daughters of her own and focused on her career and yoga practice. About 10 years ago, Kristine took a workshop on how to make traditional Buddhist mala necklaces, and she loved the creative side that opened up as she chose the gemstones to include on her mala and the skills needed to make knots between each stone. She went home and started to learn all about gemstones, ordered some, and began to make more mala necklaces. After being asked by others to make malas and bracelets for them, she decided to create a business, but wasn't sure how to make it meaningful and more than just a commercial venture. She decided to meditate about this, and right away, Devin's voice filled her mind and told her to make the business about sharing her story and legacy. Thus, Jenson Natural Jewelry began in 2017, and Kristine's jewelry, along with Devin's story, has been shared around the world, from all over the US to Europe, Japan, and even New Zealand. Kristine also uses her business as a vehicle to help the pediatric cardiology program at Minnesota Children's Hospital, where she donates 10% of her profits in Devin's memory every year. Kristine has been able to take the heartbreak of losing her niece and create a company that spreads hope and love to the world.
Welcome to Heal and Grow with Nikki. I'm your host, nickiekrommingahill. Here we talk about everything: grief, hope, illness, work, family, tragedy, possibilities, fun stuff, and not so fun stuff. It's all on the table. Let's take a look at our lives and work to heal and grow together. I'm so glad you're here. Warning, warning, warning. Hey everyone, before we get going on this episode, I'm just giving you a little warning that the sound is way off. I tried new microphones for this episode, and I should not have done that. So I apologize to you, Kris. I apologize to you, and it is what it is. Kris, hi.
Hi.
So it turns out, everyone, let's talk about how we know each other.
Okay.
Because we don't, but we do.
Yeah.
So our mutual friend, Sam Monk, who was on our podcast in January, introduced the two of us.
Yep.
And through that, we realized that we went to high school together.
Yes.
That's so crazy. So we didn't really know each other in high school. But
what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 93.
Yeah, I was 92.
Okay. And you just told me off the record, I was just kidding, that you were doing like college classes when you were a junior. So we probably didn't really see each other.
Yeah. I was pretty much not around for
right.
the last 2 years. Yeah.
But we went to the same high school, which is crazy.
And then I choreographed both of your daughters, right?
Yes.
At Ashland Productions.
Yep.
Was that, do we remember what show that is? Was it The Wizard of Oz, maybe?
They were in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I think they were little munchkins,
Yeah.
weren't they?
Abby was the Tin Man.
Okay.
And Maya was a munchkin.
Okay. Excuse me, I already needed a water break. Okay, so then I choreographed your children.
Yeah.
So, and then we meet through Sam. So that's so crazy to me. I love it when stuff like that happens.
I know. And it happens a lot in my life. And I think that's
like the synchronicity of it all. Because I don't think we meet people by accident.
Mm-mm.
And so we've been communicating for a couple of months.
Right.
But now you're in my house.
I know. We finally got it
Welcome.
to work.
We finally got to figure out. Well, you don't tell everybody where you live because we don't live anywhere near one another.
Well, I grew up in Minneapolis.
Right.
And I feel like I've been a Twin Cities girl. Like that's just my identity.
Right.
Being in the Twin Cities. But it was like 5 years ago, my husband, I like to say he got a hair up his ass and he wanted to find property somewhere. He grew up in a farm in North Dakota. And so living in the cities was just like too confining.
Not his thing.
Him.
Yeah.
And so he just decided he wanted to try and find property somewhere. And he knew I liked woods and water.
Yeah.
So like being in like a farm setting wasn't really my jam, but if I was going to leave the cities, if it was really good nature, I could probably do it. And so he went searching all over and he found this property in north central Wisconsin in the middle of the Chequamegon National Forest.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yep. And we went to it and I stepped foot on the property and I was like, ooh, yeah, there's some good bones here.
Yeah. You got like you could feel the energy of it.
Yeah. As I'm a shaman.
Love it.
Woman.
Love it.
Into all the witchy stuff out there. And as soon as I stepped on the land, there's this huge, and my degree's natural resources. I've got a career working in water protection and like landscape development, things like that. So like I know my nature stuff and I walked onto this property and there's this huge white pine at the very front of the property. And she's like 150-year-old tree. And I just was like, oh, there's some good stuff here. Yeah. And the house was crap that was on there. But my husband is like a jack of all trades. And he said, I can make this our house. And so over the last, it was like 4 years of him literally tearing it to the studs, reconfiguring everything about this little house in the woods. And last year it was done. And my youngest daughter graduated high school. And so in August of last year, get her off to college and I got the heck out of the Twin Cities and I live 3.5 hours away now up in the woods of northern Wisconsin. No Target anywhere. The closest Target is 2 hours away and anyone that knows me knows that is a sacrifice.
I'm sure. Where do you have to like go to Rice Lake for Target?
There's a town called Minocqua that's got a Walmart and I hate Walmart. Sorry, but I do.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, but that's like the closest like kind of store like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Rice Lake or Eau Claire has a Target.
You have a Superfoods or something.
Super One Food.
Super One.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that I just realized with Kris, because we're going to talk about our jewelry business in a bit. But I finally looked at the envelope that my jewelry comes in when I order from you.
Yeah.
It said Park Falls, Wisconsin. And I emailed Kris and I'm like, wait, for real? Because my husband, Paul, was born and raised in Phillips, which is
just south, like
just south of Park Falls. And my in-laws live in Glidden, which is just north. Yeah. And so I actually know where Park Falls is and I drive through it all the time. And so now next time I'm going to stop and be like,
and you can shop right from my workshop.
Oh, that would be amazing. I want to meet your tree.
You can meet my tree and you can meet all my dogs.
Does your tree have a name?
No, I just call her Mother.
Oh, I just got emotional about that. I just got tears. Oh, you can hear my voice. I just got tears in my eyes.
I just got chills.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think the people that live near me, so like I'm in the middle of the woods, but we're like in this little cul-de-sac, which is kind of nice. So it's like I don't feel like I'm totally alone. Yeah. But I think they think I'm crazy because I go up and I hug her. And I can't, she's so big, I can't get my arms all the way around her.
Beautiful.
I know, I'm such a weirdo, but I go up and I hug her and I just like thank her and I think about everything she's seen.
Right.
I mean, she's
how much life she's had, how much life she will have.
Mm-hmm. I know, I love that tree. And Yeah. And then there's like this stone that's in the ground. There's a ton of rock underground, but like there's this one that's just flat with the ground. And the moss, because it's trees everywhere, there's no grass really, it's just moss and stuff. The moss grows in the shape of a heart around the stone. And so like I go and I like put my hand on the stone and I hug my tree, and my neighbors think I'm weird, and I don't care.
But what if your neighbors are like, hey, that weird lady's hugging her tree, we want to go hug our tree too? What if maybe you're like a role model?
Maybe, or it just gives them something to talk about as they watch me, because I know they watch when the mailman pulls up and delivers the mail, because like a couple of them that live there, as soon as the mailman leaves, they go get it. And I just think it's so funny. My husband and I are like, they sit and watch for it, don't they?
Oh yeah,
like they're waiting.
Not much else to do,
so they watch me
hug your tree. Oh
yeah, I
love it.
I just don't care. I'm like, I'm getting to the age where I'm like, whatever.
Isn't that nice?
Isn't
it like you just mentioned earlier that you're 50, and I'll be 49 in gosh, like 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, when's your birthday?
May 25th.
I'm May 23rd.
No way.
Yeah.
So are you a Taurus or a Gemini?
Gemini.
Yeah, we're pretty cuspy though, right?
Yeah,
like, isn't
we're
the 21st?
right on the edge. I think the 21st, but I'm a total Gemini. I'm still not a Taurus.
I am such a Gemini.
I just got that tattoo a week and a half ago.
Okay, because dear listener, you can't see. She's showing me this awesome tattoo that has the Gemini symbol right in the middle of these
Gemini's constellation.
Okay, so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's so funny.
We're in sync.
We are. So before you got here, I pre-recorded your bio for everybody. Mm-hmm. Amazing bio. I cannot wait to talk to you about just like all of it. Where would you like to start? Do you want to start with talking about Devin and her being ill, or you just go wherever you want to start? So
I have an older brother named Darren, and he's about 6 years older than me. And so he was, he kind of did things first in life, and I just kind of watched and learned, right?
Yeah.
And Darren got married and had his kids before me. And I wasn't sure I even wanted to have kids. I was kind of like, I'm not sure. I kind of, had like plans to save the world and, do stuff and travel and everything. And Darren had his first child. Her name's Drew. And I remember going to the hospital. I mean, it's this visceral experience, going to the hospital, and she was just this little 5-pound little nugget. And I held her in my arms, and it's such a cliche, but the amount of love that exploded in me when I looked at her, like I can get choked up right now just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'd never experienced it before. And the way I liken it is my heart living in someone else. Like, and this is, she's my niece. She's not my daughter, but the fact that I just felt it so hard for her.
Right.
And I'm like the auntie of all aunties. Like I love them so much, and always was like taking care of her, and I couldn't spend enough time with her.
Yeah.
And 2 years later they got pregnant again, and everything looked fine. I had Drew with me when they went to the hospital to have their second, and her name was Devin. And when she was born, I picked up Drew and we went down to the hospital to go meet Devin, and I held her in my arms. And I remember I looked at my husband, who I was married to at the time. We're divorced now, but I looked at him and I said, okay, we need one. Like I was like, I can't,
this is happening.
I can't stand this. Like the amount of love is just like overpowering. And I remember holding,
Snowball saying hi, everybody.
I remember holding Devin, and I was looking at her, and everything had been swimmingly, like the delivery and everything. And I was holding her, and I remember saying, I don't think any of them remember it, but I remember saying, it seems like she's having trouble breathing. And she just kind of looked like a little blue to me.
And this was the day she was born.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay.
Yeah. Like that night, and they're like, oh no, she's fine. They check on her. Everything's fine. I'm like, okay, but it's just like, I just kind of felt something wasn't right.
Right.
We, meet Dev, and we, hand her back to my brother and his wife, and I take Drew back home with me. And it was very soon after that we get a phone call, and I remember taking the call and them telling me that something's very wrong, that they're discharging Dawn, my sister-in-law, from the hospital, and Devin's being rushed to Children's Hospital in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, because I had Drew with me, and it's like I can't like freak her out. And I just remember hanging up the phone, and I went into my bedroom and I dropped to my knees. And I was just like, whatever's out there, if it's God, if it's whatever, I'm like, just please let her be okay. Let her be okay. And I scooped up Drew and made my first of many trips to Children's Hospital. And I remember walking from the parking lot through the sky ramp into the hospital and holding Drew in my arms. And she doesn't know what's going on.
And how Drew's like what?
2.
She's only 2 at the time.
Yeah. She doesn't know what's going on, but I'm walking down the hallway and she puts both of her hands on my cheeks and she looks at me and she goes, "I love baby Devin." Oh. And I went, "I do too, babe. I love her too." And we walked in, went up to the NICU, and there's my brother and his wife. And I hand Drew over to them so they can try to explain what's going on. And what we found out, it was Devin was born with a very rare, always fatal heart defect.
Oh my God.
The long name is hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
Hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
Yep. HLHS.
Okay.
The very simple way to explain it is she was born with half a heart. So like the left side of her heart didn't form.
Oh my gosh.
And so we have 4 chambers in the heart.
Yeah.
Right and left side. Her left side didn't form. And she also had a very narrow aorta, and her lungs just weren't very strong.
Yeah.
And the reason why everything seemed normal at first is that when we're born, there's this valve that stays open in our heart until we're 24 hours old.
Okay.
And so at 24 hours old, that valve closes, and it's just a natural thing that happens. And like the heart really has to like start doing its job.
Okay.
And when it closed, that's when she went into distress. So I was seeing
something was up. Your gut was right.
Yeah. But it just, hadn't fully happened, yet.
Right.
And oddly enough, there was another baby born the same day in the same hospital with the same heart defect.
What are the chances?
1 million,
oh,
10 million to
goodness.
1. I don't know. But so Devin and this little boy, Tyler, went on the journey together of like, how do we keep these babies alive? And we were given 3 choices. 1, take her home and just ride it out. She'll last a couple of weeks. 2, put her on a heart transplant list, but there are never baby hearts available.
Yeah.
Or 3, she can go through a series of operations that will, all intents and purposes, replumb the heart to keep her alive long enough so she can get older and have more of a chance to get a heart transplant.
Wow.
And we chose option 3.
Yeah.
And Minnesota was one of the pioneers of creating this series of heart surgeries to replumb the heart. And so she had her first surgery when she was about 6 days old.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm not like other aunties. Like, these girls are mine as much as,
right. They're not yours.
I respect my brother and sister-in-law immensely and what their relationship is. But I was so close to them, still am. And my brother and I were sitting on either side of Devin's bed the night before her first surgery. And I think I read her Goodnight Moon.
Yeah.
And, and so we read it, and, she's out, and just laying there. And I read it, and like Darren's got one little hand, I've got the other little hand. And I look at him and I said, "I'll take her place. She can have my heart."
Yeah.
And I know that's just seems like false words. It's not. Like, I meant it with every ounce of my being.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go.
Yeah.
I've never felt that for anything. You know what I mean? Like, that I would die
for something or someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and goes, "I know." Obviously couldn't do it, but
right.
that I wanted to so badly. And she made it through the first surgery. We got to bring her home after a while. It was like a month. And she had another surgery. I it kind of becomes a blur timing, but I want to say she was maybe about 6 months old.
Okay.
When she had the second surgery, made it through that one.
And these surgeries,
yep.
What are they trying to do?
I'm going to get the chemistry and mechanics wrong with it all, but
that's okay.
But one side of the heart, like, oxygenates blood, like it brings in blood, oxygenates it. And then the other side, like, pumps it back out. Right. So it takes all the parts to make that happen. Right.
Right.
And so what they are doing with these surgeries is they're making the heart work well enough to do the whole process just in that half of a heart. So, people check like your blood oxygen levels all the time, you know, and like all of us were like 98, 99, 100%. A good heart pulse ox, blood ox for Devin was like 80.
Okay.
So
even at her best, she's 20% less than what the rest of us are.
Yep. And heart babies always kind of have a purplish, bluish tinge to them.
Okay.
Because they're not getting as much oxygenated blood in their body. And so they're always, they don't have as much energy, or, you know what I mean? Like you just think about it. If you're really sick and like you have pneumonia.
Right.
How you kind of like, like you can't really breathe very well. You're just not feeling great and don't have energy. That's kind of normal. That's base level for her.
Okay.
And every time she got a cold, it became pneumonia. And it was another stay at Children's. She had so many procedures for, checking arteries, echocardiograms. She had to have a surgery to open up her aorta a little bit. So that was a surgery through the back because the aorta is in the back side of the heart. We called that one her shark bite because it kind of looked like a shark bite scar.
Yeah.
That's the only life she knew.
Right.
Right.
Hospital surgery.
And through it all, I was like Drew's second mom. Because, they have to be taking care of Dad. If they're rushing to the hospital, someone's got to go grab Drew,
Right.
And to take, like, Darren and Dawn went on a vacation. Like, thank God they got to go on a vacation, right? Well, only my mom and I were really trusted to be able to take care of Devin.
Right.
So, we were very much just a part of the whole
all of it,
situation.
The whole group of people that raise children. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was a Spitfire. That kid, God, she was feisty. She kind of had a little scratchy voice, which Drew has too. But, I can hear Devin still. It just has this little rasp in her voice and stuff. And she called me Auntie Kiss.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, so I was Auntie Kiss. And, she was amazing, amazing child. And when she was 3, she had the final, heart surgery, 3.5, heart surgery that we were hoping would kind of be it for a while.
Yeah.
And that was in September 2003. And she made it through the surgery. It was a long slog of a surgery, but she made it through. And we were hoping, everything would be okay and we'd, be able to bring her home and keep going. And things just weren't going her way. Her body was not handling this final surgery very well. And she was having trouble recovering. She did come out of being like basically in an induced coma. And Dawn called me because Dev woke up. And I answer the phone and Dawn says, someone has got something to say to you. And she put the phone to Dev and she goes, hi, Auntie Kiss. And it's super scratchy because she had a tube down her throat for so long. And I was like, baby, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And by the time I got there, she had to be put under again because her body just started failing. So I never got to hear her voice in person. And we ended up fighting for about 7 weeks with her to try and keep her here. We put her on a machine called an ECMO machine, which basically pumps your blood for you. So her heart stopped beating and this ECMO machine did everything because they thought maybe we can just give her heart some time to heal if it's not having to work so much. So she was on this ECMO machine. I now know if you get put on an ECMO machine, there's only a 5% chance you're ever going to leave that hospital.
Wow.
But at the time, we're just like, whatever, we're just doing what we can. And then she got RSV, which is a really common virus.
Yeah.
And somehow she got it, even though she was kind of in a quarantined part of the ICU. And that just wreaked havoc on her system. Her lungs couldn't handle it. Everything started failing. But we were still, every day, we were like,
of course,
we're gonna
hopeful, and we're gonna
keep going. And the doctors went back in and actually reversed the third surgery to see, because she had been doing okay, with that after the second one. Like, let's just reverse it and try again when she's stronger. And that, wasn't doing anything. And yeah, it was tough. And in the meantime, I had my daughter, Abby, and Abby was about 18 months at this time. And I was basically Drew's caretaker. Darren and Don were pretty much living at the hospital. And I went and I picked up Drew from kindergarten one day, and we stopped at the little local grocery store by my house to get some groceries for dinner. And my cell phone rings, and this is 2003, cell service isn't as good.
Right.
But I could see someone was trying to call me. So I walked up to the windows of the store, and it was my husband at the time. And he goes, "Where are you?" And I said, I'm at the grocery store with Drew. I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Dev's going to die. They're going to turn off the machine." And here I am with Drew getting the news.
Right.
And I'm in a public space, and I have a cart full of groceries, and I've got a little girl and I'm holding her hand. And I went, "Okay." He's like, "You need to get down there." I'm like, "Yep. Okay." And I turned to Drew and I go, "We got to go."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh." And I just left the cart and walked out and get in the car, and I drove to my house, and my dad was there taking care of Abby while I was doing all the stuff. And I never called my dad anything but dad. He was just dad. I burst into the house and I go, "Daddy." And he looked at me and he goes, "I know."
Yeah.
And he bundled up, Abby, get him in the car, and I'm driving like a bat out of hell to Children's. Once again, walking down that hallway carrying Drew. And we walk in, and they had set up the space. They were very caring of how things were set up when they know a child's going to die. And I called two of my best friends, Allison Lundgren. She's now Allison Erickson, but she went to high school with us, and Renee Williams, who went to high school with us.
That's funny.
And they dropped everything and came down.
Yeah.
And the nurses allowed me to help kind of prepare Devin. So taking some of the tape off of her face and things like that. And before they turned off the machines. And I was taking tape off of her cheek, and all of a sudden her eyes opened. And she had the most beautiful big blue eyes. And I just looked at her and go, "There's those beautiful eyes." And then they closed. Nobody else saw it.
Yeah.
And as I was, helping get her ready, I kept whispering to her, and I kept saying, "It's going to be okay, baby.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. You're going to be safe. You're going to be warm. It's going to be okay. You are so loved." And, my brother and his wife wanted to be alone with her when they turned off the machines. And so I left the room and I fell to my knees. I didn't want to be dramatic, but it was I just went down, and my friends carried me into the next room that they had set up for us. And I remember laying on their laps, I don't even know, and saying, "She doesn't have to die for me to learn the lesson." I learned the lesson because she lived. I learned what was important because she was alive, not because she died.
Right.
And she passed, and they let me come back in, and I had bought, she was a rabid fan of Hello Kitty. And I had bought her these Hello Kitty PJs. And I told her when I bought them that she got to wear them when she got to go home. Well, I put them on her. I put a diaper on her, and I put her Hello Kitty pajamas on her, and we wrapped her in a blanket and we placed her in my sister-in-law's arms in a rocking chair. And I wrapped my arms around Dawn's legs, and I just kept saying, "You're such a good mom. You're such a good mom. You're such a good mom." Because I mean, the guilt.
Right. Like you can imagine how a person might feel.
Yeah. You know, it's like, of course there's nothing she could do, but they had to make the choice.
Right.
You know? And so I just kept saying, "You're such a good mom. You're such a good mom."
Yeah.
And my brother walked into the room, and Dawn looked at him and she said, "Do you want to hold her?" And Darren said, "Kris can first." And I looked over at him and he goes, "She's your baby too."
Yeah.
And so then
it's
I
beautiful.
got to hold her, and I was the last one to leave the hospital that night. I couldn't leave. I felt like if I left, then it was real.
then it's actually done.
Yeah. And they had cleared everything out of her room. There was nothing in there. It was just this empty room. And I sat on the floor. And I was just like, it was, I can't explain it. It's the deepest depth of grief. I can't imagine it being worse. I really can't.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember driving home. I don't know how I did, but I drove home. I remember I'm driving on 94 and I just start screaming at the top of my lungs because I could never show my emotion.
Of course. Well, you've got all the kiddos with you all the time. And
I either had Drew or I had Abby, or, you know, I'm always someone where in a crisis, I'm like, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I focus on. So I was alone and I just screamed.
Yeah.
And when I got home, it was late. And I got home and I went into this room where I had bought some Christmas presents already. She died in November.
Okay.
And so I'd like started to buy some Christmas presents, and I pulled out the ones I had bought for Devin, and I curled up in a fetal position. I just like held them and, you know, just sobbed. And I just can't even put justice to it with words for like just how deep of a hole I was in.
Yeah.
And the next day I remember I got up and I'm like, well, I have to find something to wear to a funeral.
Right. The things that you have to do and the things you have to think about.
Yeah. And at the time I was rail thin because of the stress. Like I just wasn't eating. I was just like a stick figure. And so I had to like find something that I could wear, you know? Yeah. And I remember I went shopping that day and I was like in a freaking TJ Maxx looking for like a pair of like black, like nice boots, you know what I mean? That I could wear in November for a freaking funeral for a 3-year-old. And I was standing in the aisle and people are milling about and doing stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm dying right now. I am like dying inside and nobody can see it. Nobody knows. And it's amazing the perspective shift that put for me in terms of never knowing what's going on in another person's life and trying my damnedest to not judge someone.
Right.
Because I don't know what's going on. Here I am at a goddamn TJ Maxx when my 3.5-year-old child, you know, niece died and I held her dead body in my arms. Right. And I'm like, TJ Maxx walking around.
Right. And everyone just gets to go about their normal life and you're just dying.
Yeah. And I was like mad at everyone in a way, you know, it's like, how dare you? You know,
how dare you be here?
Yeah. How dare you have
how dare
a life?
You exist?
Yeah. You know, and just, it was just such a crazy time. And then she died on a Thursday. And so her funeral was like on that Monday. Mm-hmm. And so over the weekend, a thing with me is I will write, like I just write for healing and stuff. And I sat down at my computer and I just spilled out a eulogy unbeknownst to me. Mm-hmm. And it was one draft and it just poured out of me. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it, you know? Right. Well, my brother did the same thing. Mm. And so he said, well, should we do it together? You know? Wow. And, so at her funeral, we got up and held arms and went up and, I remember everything I said. And I know it started with, did you know you're looking at the luckiest person in the world? Mm. It's true. I may not have a huge house or fancy clothes or, 10 cars, but I'm the luckiest person in the world because I got to meet an angel named Devin. And it just poured out of me, the whole thing. And I'd written a poem when she was about a year old, and I recited that at the end. And, it was a freaking sad funeral. I mean, there's no way around it.
Of course, right.
But it was healing to be able to do that, and to like have my brother there with me as we poured our hearts out for everyone. I remember every single person that was there. Yeah. It was at Mount Olivet, which is a big church.
Oh, that's the church I belong to.
Yeah. It was packed. Yeah. That main sanctuary was packed. And yeah, it was a surreal time. And, I'm a mom to an 18-month-old and trying to like figure out what the hell I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And after Dev was gone, I was like, I would just kind of, Jay and I, that was my first husband, we would call it like that mommy's gone to her Devin place. Because I would just kind of like move, like my consciousness would just kind of like leave me for a little bit. Yeah. And I would just kind of be staring off in the distance. Yeah. And it's like, I've got this beautiful little girl in my lap trying to like get my attention. Right. And I'd be like, off. And, life goes on. You figure, you start to move forward, but there is always a Devin-sized hole in my heart. And,
of course.
And, I had my second daughter, Maya, who is pure joy. Like, I swear Devin chose her for me. Like, she knew what I needed, and that's what I got. She's just been, this joy of a human. And Darren and Dawn had another child, Josh, who will be turning 18 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. And Devin would have been 24 this year. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it seems like yesterday and forever ago.
Right.
That
which is so interesting thing about time, like, oh, I barely remember it. I remember every single second. I mean, both of those things can coexist.
Yep. And, grief is not linear. Mm-mm. And I can still go to my Devin place, but it's not as frequent. And more often than not, there's happiness than sadness. Right. When I think of her, like the first thought isn't just sadness anymore.
Yes.
But she's always a missing piece wherever we're at. And it's always like, where would Dev be right now? What would she look like? Right. That little boy that was born the same day, he got to live to be 16.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. He died when he got his heart transplant, and it just, his body didn't take
rejected it. Oh no, that's horrible.
Yeah. But we know of another Hart family whose journey started as ours was ending. Their daughter had a heart transplant and it worked, and she's now engaged to be married. Oh. So it's like you see these Hart families, we call each other.
Right.
And it's a bittersweetness,
of course,
to see,
like thrilled for these children, like truly thrilled.
Yes.
And also, oh God, why wasn't that Devin?
Yeah. Because I remember this other family whose daughter had a heart transplant when she was about 12, on Caring Bridge. They like were posting everything. So I was following it, constantly checking it for updates. And when she got her heart transplant, I'm just like, again, praying to whatever.
Right. Like, please let this work.
And the next day they posted a picture of her, and I won't say her name because it's, not, they're not here to say it, but they posted her picture and her lips were pink. And as a Hart family, what that means.
Right. Everything's working as it should.
She has pink lips instead of blue, purple lips, and I just started bawling. I was working at the time still, and I was bawling like at my desk and trying to explain to people what was happening
to you.
Yeah. So, there's stories of ones that have made it, and it's beautiful.
Okay. So that's where we're going to stop for today. Next week, you'll get the second half of this amazing conversation with Kristine Jenson. And we've got something really fun to share with you right now. This is actually a part of the second half of Kris's conversation with me today. But I'm gonna little spoiler alert, I'm gonna spill the beans today. Kris has offered a 20% discount to all of you listeners on her entire collection on her website. 20%, everybody. I will link all this information in the show notes. But what you do is you just head over to jensonnaturaljewelry.com, pick out anything you'd like, and then use discount code Nikkie20, which is NICKIE 20. You put that discount in, you get 20% off of your full purchase, which is amazing. And I know that you're going to love Kristine's arts as much as I do. So make sure you use that discount, buy yourself some presents. Mother's Day is coming up, so you could definitely be thinking about gifts for your favorite moms in the world. And yeah, use the discount a bajillion times, a bajillion at least. Okay, that is it for today. And as always, thank you for healing and growing with me. Mwah.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, or professional advice. I am not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice.